Yes, welcome to another webinar of the World Business Angels Investment Forum Business School. We have four distinguished guests today as speakers, and we will have a keynote before the roundtable starts. And in our roundtable, we will hear from the sixth president of Mauritius, Her Excellencies Professor Fakim, and also the former Digital Economy Minister of Tunisia, and the former Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister of Portugal. He will join in a few minutes to us. Uh, Before starting our roundtable, as you know, Dr. Done, Rector of the WBA Business School, will deliver a keynote speech. And he is not only a rector, but he is also the founder of renewable energy venture funds. And he is also an angel investor who invested into 22 startups personally. And he was the CEO of Turk Telekom, one of the biggest companies of Turkey, until end of 2019. He will now speak about the future of shared economy, and also about the business transformation of SMEs and entrepreneurial ventures in the post-pandemic business environment. And he will also give a current landscape of the entrepreneurship ecosystem and the world economy to us. So, Dr. Done, thank you very much for joining us, and floor is yours.
Thank you, brother. Hello, fellow panelists. Now, I think first of all, I'd like to start by saying that the situation that the world is going through right now is not similar to the last crisis, which was 2008, 2009, in the sense that, and this is an important difference, is that in the last crisis, what happened was there was a problem in one dominant market, which was US dollar-based US market, and that then rippled through the rest of the world. Now, that ripple through effect means that you get impacted by a major dominant market being hit that way, but the actions that you would need to take may not be compatible with other markets. It depends on your own situation. And it was a V as you would expect it to be, because what was happening wasn't really domestic to you. So you went through a V, down and up. Now, during that time, some people got hurt more than others. That was mostly banking sector. And of course, other sectors got impacted by currency hits, valuations, equity markets, all of those things happened. This time round, there's a very high correlation between what is happening in the world, in the sense that we have a social and health crisis. So countries will have to go through managing the number of sick people that get symptoms, and then they go through that phase. And then, of course, they have a recovery period. So we have the first model we have is China. So we have some reference point there, and we can say, ideally, the duration is roughly around 3 months, if you're thinking in terms of timing. And then what you're taking from the end of the 3 months is a maximum 3 more months, presumably. And I'm not talking about full recovery now, please just don't get me wrong, is that countries are lagging in that space. But everybody, all countries in the world are going to have to deal with the sick. So there's a handling capacity, a cost, with unemployment, some level of corporate stress, obviously, and what they need to do in general. So whatever countries have budgeted or thought that they can deliver by the end of this year, at best will be delivered by the end of next year, okay? It's kind of like that's basically where we are. Some countries will do a little bit better end of next year than they thought they were going to do end of this year, and many countries will be now in between. We've heard a lot of negative statements being made by very high and important institutions like IMF recently, indicating that this is a very serious situation. And I think such statements should be made in order to push countries like G20 to help the poor. Positive. USA now not supporting the improvement in SDRs in IMF is a negative, and I think we will see whether that can be adjusted. But liquidity here, we have an issue. The issue relates to the US dollar and the power of the dollar. The European Union cannot redress this balance in itself, in its own markets, simply because they have one currency, one central bank, but there are many, many different countries with their own fiscals. So the EU is going to also go through their own, let me say, metrics. And then you've got the emerging markets who have their own situation, where they have fragile currencies that, again, are going to be impacted. And again, this FX exposure affects a lot of companies because most of the companies are actually have investors in foreign currency, let's say US dollar or euro, and the investors are expecting a return in that currency, which again stresses the business plans of these, let me say, young companies or SMEs, if you want to call them, or even established companies. Now, this means this kind of like complicated, hi buddy, this is a complicated situation, and the complication of this situation, of course, impacts all business again. And again, the recovery cycle of these businesses will depend on their sector. As you indicated, shared economy is one of them. So this is like an important key. The second thing I'd like to say, which is a backbone to the way people need to plan their future, going forward, is that if we look at what people are doing in the sense that you're either building up something, so that's like a startup or a slightly advanced startup, or you are scaling up, so you have some growth capital need within that company's development stage, so we're still in venture capital. Then you get into, for example, private equity type, or you're an established company, and they need to shape up. So shaping up really comes from the notion of transformation. I refer to the word business transformation more than digital, because the worst thing for companies to do, in my opinion, is to actually digitally transform what they are doing, because maybe they shouldn't be doing everything they're doing right now. To simply digitize what you're doing right now, which is what companies have been delayed to do in the last year, a year and a half, now they are stressed. So what that means really is to rethink how this pandemic is going to have an effect exactly on the sector that you are in. And we'll get now to the presumed affected one, like shared economy is affected. In fact, everybody knows what are the affected sectors, and we will see to what extent this effect is the case. Now, what will happen now, this wake-up call that has come in a dangerous sort of way, unfortunately, is that we have to cut the hype. You see, hype is a very dangerous thing. A lot of startups and a lot of this kind of like venture capital thing is built around hype. And this hype is very unfortunate because it creates a fake sense of what is known as a fear of missing out. So, you're going to miss out on this amazing thing, and it's hyped and it's hyped and it's hyped. So the best example I can give of that, let's say, is Saudi Arabia and the UAE put $60 billion into SoftBank as an example. Now, this is a lot of money. Where is that? Investing in shared economy. Okay. And we have the person boasting that he got $1 billion a minute. Okay. Now, 45 billion in 45 minutes, saying that to the head of Carlyle Group in a forum that is listeners and everything. What that means, this hype, brother, means that, and sister, what this means, you see, is that we now need to reset our thinking. Now, we have to cut all this nonsense hype and creating fictional heroes that are not heroes at all. To say that WeWork is the next Google means either you are a crook, which I don't think they are, or they don't know what a Google is. But WeWork is not a Google at all. It's not scalable. It may be a useful business model to invest in, but it is not a strategic changer of something. It's changing literally nothing. Ubers and all of these things are not scalable. So what happens in reality is that most of this thing was fake, and it already got hit to some extent before this crisis, okay? Because on its merit, it didn't work. Now we come to the reality. So businesses can be put in the form that you either have a good business, make it better. You have a middle range business, we're not so sure, well, rethink. And then we've got the businesses that are stressed. Retail, first retail failure, High Street in the UK happened, I think, like a couple of weeks ago. A case, we always knew that was a weak link in the UK market. It announces bankruptcy. Expected more to come, I don't know, we will see. But retail is stressed, we know why, okay? And again, people deferred, lowered their cost much as they could. Now you're stressed because there's no foot traffic, people are not going there. Okay, fine. Then you got the first shale gas, for example, just to mention it, because now we have this double whammy with the oil price war. As an example, first bankruptcy also announced 2 weeks ago. Now the Saudis, what are the Saudis doing? Wake up call. Now they said, let's invest in the right thing. Yes, hello, that's the right thing. Now they're investing in energy companies in Europe or other investors. I'm talking people who have money now. Remember, the money is important because all these companies need money. Now, when you're doing your calculations in relation to where you are, the notion of transformation is key to what you should be looking at. And digital transformation is less critical than artificial intelligence, in my opinion, in a time scale that if you overinvest too soon, you may be missing the next cycle. So it may not be so unwise to defer and delay, but digitize to a certain level. This is important, I believe, and that's why I refer to business transformation, that maybe you should be co-investing with others in something or having your own startups if you are an established entity. Things of this nature are key. Now, in what we call in general, this shared economy, I've already touched slightly, for example, let's say on shared space. So we've seen a clear example. It was stressed out even before the situation. But to believe that the shared economy is going to be majorly impacted, meaning irrecoverably, from this coronavirus, I believe is an over negative statement that is not grounded in fact. The fact is that if you cannot afford to obtain a service or a product because you can't afford it, and if someone is offering it in a shared form that allows you to benefit from something you would like that is affordable, and they can either lower their cost of having it, so they're lowering the cost of acquisition, or they can even make money from it, that economy has existed in the whole world all the time. But now we have more tools. So because of these tools, more and more people can do it, and there will be a slightly increased cost in, oh, I'm going to enter into this space. Okay, brother, if you want to pay a bit more money, we can clean it up for you. If you're going to see what I'm saying, so there will be a business in saying, I want special treatment, fine. So proven, tested, this place has been cleaned up for you, or this general cleaning, special cleaning, whatever you like. And again, all this is psychology. So therefore, in the end, we're up against a human psychology. If the fear of missing out, now you should be hoping of missing out. You should hope to miss out. You should focus on real data, cut the hype, don't get excited about anything. All these people have been, to a large extent, promoting themselves, and that's not the meaning of building companies. They're not about, stars. There are no stars in companies. The future companies are not built around stars. The future companies are built around teams that work together, execute together, support each other, lower the cost, innovate. That's how it works. There is no star, one star. And if it happens to be a star, it's not going to be in our scale of discussion here. You see what I'm trying to tell you? So that's, in a nutshell, we should not be overly negative, but definitely we have to be very cautious. And here, this is about human life, health, human beings. This is the key thing. And that is why if we go to this next level where we see worst case, are we talking +3? Is it 3+3 or 3+6 or 3+9? For some industries, it's going to be 3 plus more than that. So let's say 12. Some people are going to be hurt for maybe 12 months. Some people are going to be hurt for 3 to 6. In between, that cost has to come from society partly, and the rest of it. So it's not a shunt. It's not the end of the world. It is survivable. And to achieve that, people have to help each other. If this reset system happened, just to be very clear with you, in only, let's say, a region, imagine now that what we are witnessing is only happening in, let's say, the Far East. Let's say, right? And the rest of the world is okay. Let's say, yeah, this will be a different kind of a problem, right? Similar to what the Americans were suffering in 2008, but then we all paid the price, you see? So this is why, since everybody is in the same situation, institutionally, the IMF, institutionally, G20s have to somehow, the Americans cannot maintain the US dollar at the level that is at. They're gonna have to, for their own interest, okay, do something that will help the rest of us. And that is how things get slotted aligned. But the weaker parts are gonna get hurt because they were weak in the beginning, by RCC, brother. They were weaker before, they were exposed, okay? Now, if you tell me that travel will not recover, people will not want to travel ever again, I don't believe that's a very wrong notion. Human beings are what we are, okay? We move on, and all of us know, I mean, so HIV hit the world, right? Big number. Do you know how many people have cumulatively now died from HIV? Up until now, around 30 million, 29 million, something like that, I think the number is, you see, over all this time. But it happened over a period of time, okay? People got affected from that, they got scared from that, but then, you went through, people are still dying from it, and there's no absolute cure for it till now, okay? So what this means basically is you adapt, but you are still living, okay? To this notion that we're working from home, it means, wow, great, everybody can work from home. This is a very dangerous idea. It doesn't work. Factories people have to go there, man. This is so critical. So it's not going to be like everybody will stay at home, and this is an insult to people who, for example, are manual labor, and their manual labor is needed. You understand? So we should not over digitize the idea, because only few people can provide the digital service, and the rest of the people have to provide a service we need, which involves a physical, a deliverable to your house, you see? So this notion of digital, I believe, is a nonsense. And again, is a hype, you see? It's a hype. So we need now to think, use data, and cut the emotion, and build resilience into where we are. And I think I can stop at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Dr. Donay. Thank you. So now we are going to move to our roundtable, and we will talk about the expectations from policy makers, and in these difficult times. And we will start the discussion with Her Excellency Professor Group Fakim. She is not only the 6th president of Mauritius, but she was also in the 2016 Forbes list of the 100 most powerful women of the world. She was in this list. And in 2017, in the most 100 powerful African women list, she was at the first row, Madam President. So welcome to this roundtable. She was also awarded as the global thinker by the foreign policy. If you want to learn more, then you can I don't know if everybody sees, but this is her autobiography, which has been published recently, and more is in this book. And the WBA Business School's Reading Club is now studying this book, and we will invite Madam President separately for the reading club to hear more from her own mouth about her book. Madam President, what will be, according to you, as a person awarded as a global thinker, and as a powerful woman who became candidate in Mauritius independently and elected by the people, which is, I think, a very difficult thing you achieved as a woman, becoming a candidate in elections without support of any party, I think is something really important. Congratulations. Now, what do you think? What will be the impact of Mr. COVID-19 on social goods? In a positive way, in a negative way? What do you think about this?
First of all, thank you very much for putting this together. And it's always a great pleasure to be addressing the WBF. And I will take a completely opposite view from what Paul has just mentioned, because Paul is looking at the economy, hard facts and funds and money and all the rest of it. I will take a look at what I increasingly refer to the global commons, right? And as I said, over the past few weeks, we have had plenty of conversation going on the economy, health issues, and rightly so. But I think there is one part of the conversation that is missing. What is the state of the global commons? What is the global commons? We know that all life on Earth depend on clean air, water, biodiversity and health, forest, land, you name it. And more importantly, a stable climate. And these global commons, that is the ecosystem, the biomes, they process and they regulate the stability of the Earth system. And this is the very foundation of our global economy and modern society. And nature gives it all to us for free. But today we are facing an all too familiar tragedy of overexploitation and also rapid degradation of precisely this the global common, and threatening our own existence on this planet. And what we have seen, of course, is that humans extract more from the earth and they produce more waste than ever before, and we pollute more. I think we've seen that, and we do not recycle. So just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to put across in terms of decline of nature, we have, for example, 47 of our natural ecosystem, which of course is declining. 25% of the species are threatened with extinction. 23% of the ecological communities have declined. 82% of the global biomass of wild animals have declined. 72% of the indicators which are developed by indigenous people and the local communities show ongoing deterioration of elements of nature which are important to them. So what does that mean? That means that over and above the short-term impact that COVID is presenting to us, we are going to be facing, once we come out of the COVID-19 issue, we're going to have to confront climate change as, to me, as being the biggest impactor in the medium to long term. So in fact, scientists like myself have been warning that the planetary boundaries that have ensured a stable condition that have enabled all civilization to form and to prosper over the 11,000 years are now being strained, and in some cases exceeded. And some of these boundaries have already been breached. So to stay within the planetary boundaries, because the conversation today is all about leadership, we need a radical transformation of key economic systems that are required. We need to transform food, urban and energy system and move increasingly to a circular economy. So just to come back again to the fact that we are into the business issue, business as usual will guarantee disaster. Incremental change will no longer suffice. So the only solution is transformational change and very strong leadership, where decisions are taken based on scientific evidence, facts, and these matter for our survival. But people are only realizing that COVID-19 has shown us, have made us discover important facet of this. And as you know, for the past few weeks, we have seen clean air coming back, we have seen blue skies, and we have seen pictures of animals roaming in cities, in Paris, in Vienna, and all these in the cities and waterways. So I think we have to come to terms with the fact that the human race is becoming more and more urbanized. In fact, if we go back to 1918, only 14% of the world population live in cities. And by 1950, it was 30%. And by 2050, we're expecting it to be almost 70%. So, you know, historically, people have fled climate change and disease, but increasingly as we adopt a more sedentary and urbanized way of living, that evolutionary route is escaping us. And we are linked increasingly to places and less able to flee danger. So climate change, population growth, globalization are allowing pathogens to move around quickly. And there is more pathogen diversity, more host switching, and susceptible hosts are coming into contact with pathogens to which they have no resistance. And I think this is exactly where we are right now with COVID-19. We have moved too far into our system, into our ecosystem, and people are now living places that never used to live before, in high densities, coming into contact with pathogens we didn't know existed before. We've seen that C19, for example, we are increasingly pointing it out to the bats. So how did it get there? So we will come across more disease we have never seen before. And we thought we had eradicated. We thought we had done away with the flu in 1918. And this is affecting humans and on things that we rely on, in fact, crops and livestock, which we'll come back to later on in the conversation. But increasingly, we need very strong leadership to get us beyond the COVID-19. We need strong leadership to actually help us survive climate change, because to me, that is an even bigger pandemic that we still haven't come to terms with, because we have adopted the frog in the boiling water system. We are gradually getting used to it, and we are not coming to the fact that this is perhaps the biggest challenge that COVID-19, more than COVID-19 is presenting to us right now.
Madam President, thank you very much. Thanks so much. I see that Dr. Done took so much notes from your speech. Then we will we will rediscuss the issues. Thank you very much. Now I want to move to His Excellency Antonio Costa dos Santos, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Portugal. And dear Minister, there's a big crisis, as a matter of fact, in the world. We accept it as a recession or whatever we say, but there's a crisis, and employment will be and is now becoming one of the most important concerns of everybody. Governments, companies, people, everybody's talking about what will be the future of the people. And yes, we are expecting that this virus crisis will end in June. But if it doesn't end in June, how many months more governments can support by paying the salaries of people instead of companies? And by the way, of course, there is no equality in the economic power of countries. Some countries can support, but other countries may not support. So, what do you think? What like a role policymakers should take, and what like a leadership skill they should show in these circumstances? And what would you do if you would become the Deputy Prime Minister of Portugal today under these circumstances? Please, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to be in contact with you and have this discussion. I'm sorry the delay, but the internet at my home broke, so I need to move to the company. I'm in the office now. I want to have a look, the point of view politic concerning the intervention of the government in the economy. For me today, there is a large majority, institutions, politicians, business, they agree that the governments and central banks should make intervention in the economy, mainly in the early stage. For example, you have already now the Central Bank of the UK is lending money to the government. Is one example. The investments of the government should be in two phases, this intervention. For me, the first phase should be in the early stage with no refundable funds to support namely SMEs and maintain the employment and to support the working capital that they need at this moment. In second phase, I believe that the government should finance to make a cooperation with the companies, because it's important, government, business, to have a cooperation in post stage to finance the companies with the guaranteed with the government, loans guaranteed by the government. But it's necessary to have a good cooperation between business and the government. But this intervention of the government should also to protect the companies, strategic companies that they have. In the second phase, should protect these companies. private or public, by inject funds and assume one participation as shareholder or the guarantee of the states, I said. This way, in some countries, could be very interesting to avoid the companies. The companies of the other countries that came out of the crisis faster could be cheaper. These companies, the companies of this company, and they can buy cheaper these companies. There are some strategic companies in some countries that is necessary to protect by the governments to avoid what you have nowadays. For example, it's incredible that in a situation like that, the most part of the countries are dependent on one supplier to battle the virus. It's not possible. So this is one lesson that we have, I think, to extract of this situation. The other side, one question that the governments and the politicians should be confronted is about the recovery. Because the recovery of the economy will be asymmetric. I mean, there are countries that are in good economic situation, financial situation, and can have a recovery quickly. The others, like for example, the Latin countries, the American Latin countries, probably they will have more problems to recover its economy. So it's necessary that these governments find the cooperation with the international organizations to have funds to support these economies, mainly in the next 2 years, because it will be very important. Because this asymmetry of the recovery could create some problems, social problems, and inequality in economic and social situation.
Dear Minister, are you happy with the response of European Union to this Mr. COVID-19? Are you happy with the response?
The position of the European Union is one example that nowadays the governments, I remember the slogan, the United States, it's Trump, American first. Nowadays we assist each country, my country first. It's incredible. What happens in the European Union, it's incredible. And this is one example that we need at the political level, work in way of the cooperation. We can't alone to resolve the problem. We need to work together. And this organization, like European Union, it's necessary to work with the FME and the others to resolve the problems of the world, because we need funds. But we have funds, all central banks launch money in the market. All institutions launch money in the market. But we are confronted with one crisis where you have demand and supply. And you need one equilibrium between the two when you have the recovery. Because if not, you could have a financial crisis. If you have a production, you don't have consumers, you have a disequilibrium. And after, you have a financial crisis. So for me, this is the most important at a political level, to find governments cooperate and work with business to find the best solutions, because the industry will be totally different.
Mr. Minister, you were education minister of Portugal for many years. And what do you think after this crisis, educational models, education system will change according to you? Because after this Zoom, I see that starting from elementary school children until university students, everybody is able to take their education online. And what do you think about the future of education?
The education, we have a great challenge for education, but not only in the instruments, the mechanisms. That is, I see it's one instrument to enter in my own, the education. The problem is the contents of the education. Curriculum is the most important, it needed to change. And this crisis, we talk every time about the social, economics, and the people never talk about, the politicians never talk about education. But the education is the base to resolve the problems in the future. Look at the Africa, America, Latin. A lot of young people, the most important is to invest in education in these people, in these areas. I think we are confronted with one situation where we have the psychoeconomy that more than the numbers, the figures. So for me, in conclusion, I think that the government should assume the intervention with business in the companies with courage. One intervention with courage. Second, the government and central banks should cooperate and union with the great organizations. What happens with the European Union? Look, the funds of the European Union for all countries is less than the German launch in its economy. So a special attention we need to look about the developing countries. Nobody's talk about that. And we need to avoid one crisis in these countries. That's my idea about the intervention, political intervention, cooperation between the countries, cooperation in international organizations, but together. If each country goes one way, I think we can resolve the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. But I loved your, I mean, from first my country, isn't it? This is the new slogan of European Union. This is good. Okay, thank you very much again. I am moving to His Excellency Numan Fehri. He is the first digital economy minister of the world. And he brought startup law to Tunisia. He initiated this law, as a matter of fact, when he was minister. And he made a great speech at the United Nations in 2015 on the importance and future of digital economy and digitalization, digital transformation. So, Mr. Minister, now we are talking about digital transformation, business transformation, etc. So your speech in 2015 and today, what is the difference? Could you please tell us if what you were expecting 40 years ago about the world is now happening or something different is happening?
Okay. Thank you very much for organizing this.
By the way, we are 156 people in the room. We have 156 participants listening to us. Just for your information. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, my friend Baybar, for organizing this. And I feel a bit humbled to talk after our friends, Professor Amina and Paul and Dr. Paul and Antonio, and we are all coming from different backgrounds. We are coming, some of them from business, some of them from serving people in government and elected, etc. Maybe I am fortunate to have been doing both, and I understand where both are coming from. And I'll be very blunt with you, my friend Baybar. I think the plea is the same, and you were referring to the plea I made in the UN in 2015, in December 2015, I asked very simple things from government to consider 4 pillars and some sort of a platform. The first pillar is that every single person in every single country needs to have internet. And if they have to subsidize internet, it's much better to subsidize internet than subsidizing sugar or protecting smoke. That's number one. Number two, and you see it's very relevant today, is to move to digital education, to use the digital tools to deliver education. And when I say that, it's not simply connectivities and tablets. It's much more than that. It is content, it is business models, it is training the teacher, retraining the teacher that their job is not to deliver content, but their job is to increase teamwork, etc., etc. And now, in terms of content, I'm not sure, as His Excellency Antonio said, if the previous content pre-COVID is valid for after content. We need to rethink that. And the third thing, which is extremely important, is to eliminate paper from any transaction between citizen and government. Why? For 2 reasons. Number one, you will reduce the cost of the transaction. It will be more efficient, and it will be more traceable. And that is absolutely necessary. And you see today that is what's needed. And for the fourth thing, the fourth pillar, the plea was make laws adapted to the 21st century. Because most of the law made are made early in 19th century, 20th century. Leaders were, now we have much more, but before it was leader were 20th century minded in managing or leading youngsters who are 21st century minded, but using laws of 19th century and paper invented in the 15th century. So there is some disconnect that we need to change the laws. So number one, access to everybody, digital education, zero paper, and making laws for 21st century. And when we do that, whatever we do elsewhere, we will naturally create an environment for new businesses and new startups to thrive and to create things that that we cannot think of. Innovation will thrive. Connection will be made across the world. Now, 5 years later, what happened? Yes, of course, there was a bit of progress in the connectivities, there is a bit of progress in changing the laws, but frankly speaking, I didn't see, I'm speaking here specifically about developing countries where they are happy to put 100 million in a highway for 100 kilometers, and they are not happy to put 10% of that to cover the region by internet. It didn't happen as fast as we wanted to do, but the crisis of the COVID-19 crisis on the last 3 weeks, I think in some countries, and I can speak about my own, made more impact in digitalization of the economy than the last 5 years. And even though, you know, ministers and governments are good, but the natural resistance to change, oh, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, is it so urgent? And now, over the last simply 3-4 weeks, we started to use the digital tools properly. Obviously, we would have better used them before, but now there is that mind switch, and it's happening. It looks like now and after the 21st century, after the COVID-19, that is the start of the 21st century. That is the start when we will use the start of the 21st century is now, when people will use the digital tools allowed to us to reduce, to make sure that product and services, whether delivered by public or delivered by private, are more are cheaper, faster, and we have more equitable word. We can do make a more equitable word. That is what I feel. Obviously, I'm not extremely hopeful that these things will change, because as Antonio said earlier, my country first. And then by taking my country first, then my region first, then my family first, etc. Where I think we will see a new breed of people, a global leader who are not necessarily in governments, who are working cross governments in order to improve these things. Once we go through this period, I hope I answered more or less your questions, and probably have more to discuss in the next intervention.
Yes, thank you very much, dear Mr. Minister. So you are talking about a new age, as a matter of fact. Maybe can we define Mr. COVID-19 as the initiator of a new age? Middle age were closed by a Turkish Sultan, Sultan Mehmet, and opened the new age. So Chinese COVID is now closing an age and opening a new age. This is showing how the history is flowing.
Yeah, I think it is. The dinosaurs disappeared because there was a huge phenomena around the Earth, and we moved from Jurassic to another part.
From dinosaurs to human being to now an unseen virus.
And I think it's an opportunity to change. I cannot say if I am optimistic or pessimistic for the level of change, not yet. But we all need to work together to make that change as positively as possible. And I want to add one small thing, referring to what Professor Amina said. In 2019, on 29th of January, we have consumed all the resources that we would have produced in the whole 2019. All the resources on that year that we would have produced, we already consumed them on 29th of June, in 2019. I hope, and there was a movement by a lot of people to move that date beyond because we were consuming 1.7 times what the Earth can produce. And we have only one Earth. It could be fine if we have 1.7 Earth, but we have only one Earth. Therefore, we really need to work towards renewable energy. That's why I'm happy to see my friend Paul in the renewable energy space. And we really need to move to the new age with a more global common mind. And believe me, there will be government in order to be elected. They will have to think my government first, otherwise they will not be elected. Therefore, it's our role, us as civil society, global civil society, to make sure that we think global common.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Minister, you mentioned about the paperless economy in your speech in 2015 in the United Nations, but I see that your speech didn't give an impact on people. What we see now is there is a great demand to toilet papers, I think, in the markets. So it is a completely in contradiction what you were expecting. Okay, thank you very much.
When they say paperless transaction,
yes, transaction. Yes, thank you very much, Madam Minister, Madam President. I know you don't enjoy talking about money, business, etc. very much, but as the most powerful woman of Africa, what do you think about the business climate of Africa after COVID-19? If will Africa will be affected, what will be the impact? But let's make this second round faster than the first round because time is passing.
Thanks again, Weber, but I think the pandemic will have drastic consequences in Africa, especially in many countries that have poor public health infrastructure and weak welfare systems. So for African economies, the shock will result in a dramatic loss of revenue and slower economic growth. It is too early to assess how much, but this continent, as you know, has survived Ebola, and the continent will recover well from the coronavirus if the leaders, again, we come back to the theme of this meeting, if the leaders act boldly now, and of course, with the help of the international community providing help where it's urgently needed. But as much as a public health crisis, a crisis of the public health, the pandemic threatens to batter the African economies, especially the countries and sectors dependent on trade. And we have recently got a report from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, which has estimated the continent will lose many percentage points of GDP growth as a result of this pandemic, and it's too early, and I think the figures are still conservative, and they cannot be put forward given the massive destruction of the trade and economic activities around the world. So already hit by the crash of the oil prices, and oil-producing African countries, I think they are losing billions in income revenue. And additional health spending on the pandemic is also expected to reach over 10 billion across Africa. So a major economic contraction is to be expected for sub-Saharan Africa if the pandemic and global disruption are severe and endure. But again, as Africa is still bracing for the full effect of the pandemic, it has already been hit by collapsing trade and broken supply chains. And as you know, many African countries are still dependent on exports to China. So imports no longer arriving in African ports are also causing pain and destruction. And crashing even worse in tourism, and I think this is affecting my country already, which you know is a major source of revenue in many African countries. So what makes the pandemic even more painful is that it's already aggravating previous economic strains, including the disruption of global trade with, as you know, the US and China trade tension, the effect of Brexit on supply chain and financial flows, the decline of price on industrial commodities such as copper. And I'm very happy that Paul mentioned, of course, Saudi Arabia, and we have seen the oil price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. So the coronavirus outbreak will strain already weak social security systems beside health, nutrition, which are also critical areas, especially in poorer countries. And depending on the contagion rate, many sectors of the economy can be paralyzed, and not just external trade and tourism, but the domestic sectors as well for the economy. So in order to accelerate recovery, bolder and visionary leadership laced with compassion and empathy is needed. And I think this is where we have to make a difference post-COVID if we are going to into a new era. So increasingly African countries will need to depend a lot on the informal, which you know it depends a lot on the informal sector, and women play a very important role, mustn't forget that. Small businesses and even larger ones might disappear or they will be seriously contracted. So now is the time, Bebars, is to invest more in infrastructure, be it digital or otherwise, and also in the infrastructure of the mind with the youth. We need to appreciate that investment into the education, and I think the previous speakers have mentioned that, of our children, their health, the future. It must come from African resources. I think for too long, we have said that the money will come from outside. No, the money has to come from our own pocket. And Africa must trade with herself more and more, for deeper integration is called for. And we do not want an isolationist attitude. And unfortunately, we cannot afford to have my country first, even though we'd like to. And we appreciate also that agriculture, manufacturing, processing of raw material produce jobs and allow for innovation. And this, of course, increase our state of preparedness. So to rethink our business model, that we are not catering only for the shareholders, we also need to cater for the stakeholders. And I think just to close, the model that Honda developed after Hiroshima where the workers became shareholders of the global company. And so it creates a sense of ownership. So maybe post-COVID-19, if we move from the mindset of shareholder to stakeholder, maybe we'll see more of the workers holding stocks to these companies that they're actually going to create, or governments are going to create. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. From shareholders to stakeholders, I think it will be the biggest business transformation in the post-pandemic business environment. Thank you very much. I am moving to His Excellency Antonio dos Santos, and I want to ask a quick question, dear Minister. We were talking about freedom. We were talking about how people should be. So I mean, give importance to freedom, free thinking. But in the last 1 month, there is no freedom in the world. Government says don't go out. Everybody is staying at home. Government says put this on your mouth, and everybody is putting it. And I see that in the world, there is no objection, by the way, from people. People are happy when people, as a matter of fact, in Istanbul, for example, in my country, people are asking the government not to allow people go out. This demand is coming from people, from municipalities, etc. So, do you think we should rethink what are the dynamics of democracy? I mean, is it, for example, what happened in China, what happened in Hungary? There are things that I think we should rethink. What do you think about this?
Well, the virus, this situation creates one question to the politicians and the civil society, is about the privacy. Because our private, I don't know what will be in the future. Nowadays, all of us, we are afraid about the virus. And this system creates one society of the fear, one society of the fear, where is confronted with the fear. When the WHO announced the virus in China, I think it was later, in all consequence, concerning the knowledge that the China has already when he announces about the dangers of this virus, and the message should be strongest. We felt after every press conference, our citizens and politicians, the idea of the virus is extremely dangerous, like is in fact it is. But the recommendations begin in February, and the virus began in China in December. So I think we have creates one situation where the governments and the populations assume different positions. Half of them look at the situation, namely the European countries, like a flu in some countries, more a flu. And others assume like with fear. So quickly installed fear everywhere. And when the fear is assumed by the society, what creates one situation to implement any measures that attacks the privacy of the persons. But I have some doubts about some measures in China. Later I go to the Hungary. It's too different. China, I don't agree that tracking the people by technology. It's not instead interesting to compare with the Singapore. And it is interesting because the general director of the WHO organization, health, talks about the example of China, but didn't talk the example about Taiwan. Taiwan is one example of the citizenship. Even Singapore, that's a link connect with China, but in another way, with it's most democratic. Good results of this surveillance that are applied by the government could encourage, for me, authoritarian regimes to adopt similar measures in the future, situation where they have conditions to implement that. National security, public health, for example, if the companies wanted to monitor the productivity of the works, for example, if they want to protect the industrial patents, everything could in the future to these instruments be installed to cut the privacy of the people. Today, in the first human history, technology makes possible to monitor everyone. That's the problem. That's why in the battle that we have coronavirus, some governments deployed the new surveillance tools, and we don't know what are coming in next years. As said Professor Hariri, hypothetically, policymakers one day could demand each citizens wears a biometric bracelet that monitor our health system in name of our welfare state. Don't forget, combination AI with biomedicine could be a support to develop new algorithms for biological phenomena. This is dangerous. That battle of the spreading virus create conditions for the first step, and with approval, what is incredible, approval, everyone approval that. But we can ask if there is alternatives. How we can choose between privacy and health without this? Okay, yes, we can empower citizens, act in advance in the right time, give clear information, honest reporting, promote extensive tests, respect the measure of the authorities, willing cooperation of well-informed people. That's what Taiwan did. They adopt this kind of recommendations with this system. For example, we wash the hands without a police control because we understand the facts. Why we need to have a control in the privacy of the persons. We talk with one. Why? And we opened the window to create a situation like that. For me, there are some words, key words, that we reminded our politicians, civil societies, members of parliament, our society. Trust, truth, empowerment, cooperation. It's the way to reinforce citizenship.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Minister. Unfortunately,
sorry, I don't talk about the Hungary, because Hungary and China, we need to compare because are two different, very interesting analysis we could do.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think policymakers, when there is something they don't they face first time in their life, are changing their roles to policymakers, from policymaker to policymaker. This is the shortest way to overcome the problem, I think, because they don't know. By time, of course, everything will change. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Dear His Excellency,
sorry,
yeah.
you came back to discuss about the Hungarian and we came back
Yes.
another
time.
Okay.
Yes, another time. Thank you very much. Dear Numan Fehri, tell us 3 or 4 or 5 or 1 or 2, whatever you like, but 3 steps for governments now to take to cope with this problem more easily through digitalization.
Thank you. I will build on what my friend Antonio said. Government needs to use technology to be trust maker rather than to be police maker. They really need to use technology to harness the civism of their country, and they build the trust between them and their country and between the citizens themselves. And this comes back to one important thing, which is education. They need to educate people to be trustworthy. That's one of the immediate things. Number two, I think it's of extreme importance that they realize that, and this is mostly this is developing countries, they need to realize that banknotes are a thing of the past. That banknotes now, it's like a stamp post. Do you remember stamp post? When you send a letter?
Of course.
In the next few years, the banknote itself, it will be like a stamp, like a stamp post. Therefore, go and use digital for the transaction. I'm not speaking about cryptocurrency yet, that's what I would advise central bank to rethink about the digital currencies. And when I say digital currency, I'm not saying the digital currency that they are based on smart cards that you will end up paying Visa or MasterCard. No, I am speaking about national digital currencies and trust startups to build the new financial tools. Again, I'm not speaking about the digital economy as an objective, but the digital technology as a tool to deliver cheaper, faster, better services. I'll be very direct, and maybe we don't have time. The best digital economy in my country for the last 5 years was the COVID-19. The COVID-19 changed the way my government look at digital economy. It becomes nimble, it becomes faster, it works very quickly with the private sector, with the civil societies, and therefore we need to learn from it. We need to make it sustainable. We need to make it as a new start rather than only an exceptional measure for the period. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Minister. Dear Minister, maybe is it a good idea to invite all central banks to print the same money? I mean, with the picture of COVID on them, because every government is printing their own policymakers on the paper. So the global policymaker, I think, became Mr. COVID-19. By the way, I am calling him as him and Mr., not Miss or Mrs., because I believe that women cannot give such kind of a damage to the world. So I'm calling it as Mr.
Thank you.
You see, Madam Minister, Madam President, how WBAF is committed to empowering the world economy through women's potential.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Minister, yes.
Yeah. One small thing maybe on the business and what this, because referring to what Paul said earlier, the financial systems and the central banks needs to rethink the concept of money and relink the money to trust. And that's why local digital currencies, which are governed by the central bank rather than by Mr. X and Y, we will see them coming. The other thing I wanted to say is we will see through business model what will change, what we are seeing as we speak now, that there are business model changing in the real Darwinian sense, which means the most flexible, the businesses that they will be able to pivot from, for example, a textile factory for clothing to a textile factory for medical staff, the pivoting, the companies need to pivot and rethink their businesses and products. And obviously, there is one part which was missing and where Africa actually is very good at it, but it is not organized, is the business of the last mile and the first mile, on the logistics part. Actually, if you think about it, our non-formal businesses, our women's who are doing product and services, and we have informal people who are delivering them, etc. It's the fantastic occasion now to bring them into the system through the national programs, to embark them in the system rather than leaving them in a totally precarious way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Dear panelists, I think we shouldn't go to the third round, but go to the questions part, because we have only 15 minutes. And last week we sent request to all participants who had registered last week and asked them to send their questions to us. And now I will give the floor to Ivan Jovatic. He is the president of the Montenegro government's Montenegro Broadcasting and Television Company, the official television company of Montenegro Republic. So he prepared some questions, but he also collected some questions from other participants. So he will ask the questions to you one by one. So let's try to answer them in 15 minutes. So I'm now inviting Ivan Jovatic to the room. By the way, Montenegro television is going to make a comment about this roundtable shortly. I don't know if you have ever been to Montenegro, but it is a lovely country at the Adriatic beach. And Montenegro TV, yes, it is not a very big country, but Montenegro TV is watched in the region, in Croatia, in Montenegro, Albania, and Bosnia. Mr. Jovatic, welcome. Dear Ivan, how are you? Can you please make unmute? We don't hear you. Yes, now we
hear me now. Okay, yes, because hello to everyone. Just a second, because I'm listening on two devices. Do you hear me now? It's It's much better,
we hear you. Yes, now we hear you very well. Great.
Good, because I was listening to you on two devices, and first of all, regards to all of you.
And still we are listening to you 2 times.
Okay, so I will do the following. Just a second. I will do the following. Do you hear me better now?
Yes.
Do you hear me better?
Yes. It is very good.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you, Ivan. We hear you very well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and sorry for small technical errors. Regards to all of you, it is my pleasure to be part of this event, and of course, thanks to Vibars for this opportunity and to arranging this webinar, and also thanks to all distinguished speakers for great insights we heard so far. As Vibars said previously, I do have a question for each of the speakers, and I will start in a row from Dr. Paul Duany. And my question to Dr. Paul Duany would be, what do you think are the best ways for SMEs and startups to respond to this situation and potentially pivot their businesses and their business models?
You know what, I tell you, I think one of the most important things about when you are trying to handle, let me say, a pandemic situation like this, which is outside your control, at the level of individual or a company, depending on, in which situation you are in, is to be able to take something out of all of these discussions that allows you to take an action point to execute upon, because life is about taking execution steps. In this sense, what troubles me about mixing too much conversation between, let me say, high-level policy and at the time of action points that companies need to execute upon, is that these are incompatible. Now, at the level of companies that feel that this next step, this experience, this time frame, is such that worst case scenario means that they need to rethink entirely what they're doing. Perhaps the sooner they make that decision, the better it is for them and for everybody that's there. And the second thing in it is to ensure, as the next level, is to ensure that, because most of these companies are running on shareholder money, perhaps, meaning they're running at a deficit, and that's the challenge. So imagine yourself, you are a startup and you're running with shareholder money, and this COVID hits you, all right? Now, you need to wake up in the morning with an action point instead of stuff that doesn't relate directly to your business. In this sense, there are obviously, you can see what different sectors are, and that's why there was this conversation relating to shared economy. Is the shared economy going to be irreparably harmed from the COVID-19? Okay, and in most cases, in my opinion, they will not be as affected, to the sense that you need to shut down. Okay. Now, of course, that's the weaker companies who are still starting up and they need to grow, etc. Is to ensure you've got that, and you have to give comfort to the funding source that where you are controlling your costs. The team is still working, and either this provides an opportunity, or if it's hurting you, you need a bit more time. But if it's a downside, shut down and do something else. And I think this is kind of like the best that I can suggest people to do. And in the last conversation we had last time, we were saying, look also for collaboration, meaning where you can help others, then there could be in reverse that they can help you. That can also be meaning sister companies, in some cases even competing companies, that in the end you are competing, but there is a form for that. What is very important out of all of this is to survive it, either as an entity in itself, or of course for the people who are working. This is the step that everybody needs to think. Then the next step would be to build resilience into your system, meaning if you're able to get that extra money, because you are in a funding round, perhaps what you should try to do is to lower the next round. People were supposed to inject a couple of $100,000, tell the money source, you know what, let's take 50. You see what I'm trying to say? So you make some sacrifices on your plan, delay some things, don't stick to your original plan. You see what I'm saying? Even if you are in development mode, make some sacrifices. This would be what I would suggest.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your answer. I have another. I know that time is ticking away, and I will pass to another question to Professor Gurib Hakim. And my question to you: what would be, by your opinion, of course, the biggest economic impact in post-corona world? What will dramatically change, if you think anything will change in a world after this pandemic is over?
Thank you. I think this is a very, very wide question, because we are already really looking at the scenarios of what is going to happen. But already, I think, as Paul has just mentioned, there will be a big shift in the way we have been doing business. If you look at it from the perspective of our businesses, we're already looking at a complete change in the way we have been addressing the business model. And we need very, very fast, very quick decisions. We need to be able to speak to our employers and communicate with them properly, speak the truth to them as to where the situation is. And this will cut across, I think, most of the businesses across. Again, I come from the vantage point of Africa. Here, we are in the informal sector, and many of the businesses, they tick around the informal economy. So how do countries actually deliver in that framework? That will be a very, very big challenge, because all that we have been talking about in terms of the digitization, bar a few, of course, North African countries where, of course, no man is operating, it is still not penetrated as well as it is in some parts of Africa. So again, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis as to how the economy will actually come up. But I think the advantage that we have, again, I take it from the vantage of Africa, is that last year, many countries, they ratified the free trade agreement. So where there is the notion of deeper integration, and I think there, in that space, many countries will have to cooperate, and they have to collaborate and ensure that trade flows, services flow, people move as well. But again, with the caveat that we know that what has happened with the shared economy, and we also have seen the emergence of the gig economy prior to the crash, prior to COVID, if I may say so. So again, this had to be re-looked into, because we have seen the downside of the gig economy. It offers no protection whatsoever to the workers. So I think we are going to come up with a scenario where all these have to be really looked at. And the model that has worked prior to COVID may not be applicable post-COVID, because the social safety net have to be put in place. Injection of capital by government will have to be put in place again. And how do we rope in maximum human capital? How do we bring in the diaspora to be able to help us move on beyond the COVID-19? I think all the questions are going to be there. So we really are at sea as to what the format of recovery will be like after we get out of this COVID-19. I think if I listen to Paul, we are already talking about 2021 before we see the real emergence of a new normal. But unfortunately, the bad news that I have to bring in as a scientist is that we haven't seen the end of these kind of pandemics. Already emerging diseases are costing the world economy something like 1.3 trillion annually, and more than the COVID will actually cost. But of course, we can double that for the COVID-19 alone. So what it all be is totally nebulous for the time being, but I think we have to show a lot of preparedness to be able to tackle the post-COVID event.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Baibas, can I continue? Do you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. Regarding the question, actually the answer you gave, and regarding the situation we have had so far, and again, regarding the, unfortunately, potential to have some kind of pandemia of this or even bigger size next time in the future, because this will definitely not be the last one. This might be the first one of this size or this wave in our times, but who knows what can happen. And sorry, and I'm not saying just referring to natural viruses and natural diseases. We all know that biotechnology is one of the security challenges of the 21st century. But nevertheless, from this moment and from this situation, we saw a lot of different developments, I think. And my key question to Mr. Dos Santos would be, what are, based on your experience and your opinion, of course, what do you think are the learned lessons from this pandemic, and what can be changed, achieved, implemented regarding the future global economic and institutional cooperation?
Okay, I'm afraid that we can't learn anything because we learn did not learn anything before.
Mr. Minister, Madam President wants to say goodbye because she has to catch another meeting now. And thank you very much,
Thank you,
dear President.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much
Bye-bye.
for joining
Yes,
us.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye-bye.
But until now, we learned anything about what happens in the world. Look, after a globalization with an increase of the products in the world, the standard living, we have a return with this crisis. The thinking, each one thinks himself, and what in a way of is isolation. I'm afraid that we will have 1 or 2 years to learn what you are put in your question. I think we'll be with the crisis, with living the problems, with trying to find the solution for problems that the countries, the politicians will find new ways of the cooperation. There are some words that is important nowadays: solidarity, cooperation. But for that we need good leaders, and we don't have good leaders in the world. And anywhere we don't have good leaders. That's the question. That Mr. Doani,
Yes, sir.
can you educate people to be good leaders in the politics? It's a challenge for you.
You know, we have a business school, brother, and Bybar Bay can solve any problem. But you know what? To tell you something, brother, what we need to think now is that we have a problem in front of us, brother. It's very important. We have a problem in front of us. This is engineering logic. So this is the key thing. We need now to survive the immediate problem we are facing. If we are telling a policymaker today that he needs to be thinking about, you know, rethinking about democracy and so on, you're not going to progress. That is not to say that nobody should be thinking about that. You see, we need to know that if someone is hearing a conversation from a government, from a health minister, yes, he needs to go to bed, sleep at night to get his rest, wake up the next morning with a plan of what he is going to do, he and she going to do that day, you see? Now, if you plan societies on the basis that people are able to make those plans, then the governments are doing their job. Now, that's not the only job they have. But if we are going to be sitting here and saying that, for example, global warming is going to be a catastrophe, so we have to change our way of life, then the world leaders are never going to agree upon that. Because you know very well, like the leader of the USA doesn't even believe in global warming, for example. So then who cares what you and I think, you see? So what is key, and I think and this is an important governance point. The governance point comes from every citizen should know that they have a role that they can contribute as a citizen, and they get a fair pay for what they are doing, and the government provides for them the minimum things that they need so that they are able at that level to survive. You see, this is survivability is now strained by this virus because revenue sources are cut. People cannot move, so the governments have less ammunition to help, you see? And if they print their currency, they devalue their currency. And even in the European Union, you know very well, I mean, the weaker countries economically are dependent on a currency you cannot control, you see? So you cannot control to solve your own problem. And then the stronger countries, like let's say Germany, therefore obviously will solve their own problem because the fiscal part is under their own control. So you cannot expect a solution from the EU because you are not one country. You are a union with one currency, you see? So this is a very important dilemma, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to do. Now the question is survive the next step. This is leadership, by the way. But to say that, because a leader cannot solve everything themselves, you see, this is key. So to say that this coronavirus is not survivable is incorrect, okay? It's not correct. We are going to survive it. And last time we were discussing, by the way, can you imagine every day the health minister of every country is informing the number of people who died that day? Listen, please, this is so important. We were discussing it last time, Barbas Bey, and you remember. So we were saying something like this. Imagine if every day the health minister of every country tells us how many people died that day from everything. Why only on Corona? Okay? Yeah. Imagine that. And all of us are listening to how many people died. Listen, my brother and sister, when people die, we have to pray for them and we have to move on. The people who are alive, the people who are sick, hospitals, can they manage that part? Help in that sense is a transition. It's going to take 3 months, 4 months, whatever it takes. It's not going to take forever. Survive this period. This is important, okay? Because the cause of death is not so clear. People who are dying from coronavirus are already themselves weak with something else. So the cause of death is not defined the same way. People are scared. How come in my country more people are dying than in China? It's not like that. You see, then you start thinking your government is making a mistake. Your government cannot do more than they're doing. You see? So we need to rethink in steps, execution steps. And this is survivable for sure. Now, building resilience into the system, resilience, we have a major, your governments and all governments have a problem with the US dollar. You have a problem with the euro currency. Emerging markets are running into a major problem right now because if they lose GDP, their public debt today goes up 20% and they haven't borrowed more money, So can you imagine you are a government, in 6 months, your total debt to GDP crashes 20% and you haven't done anything wrong.
Sorry, Doan, only to give the good news to Ivan. You have 2 ways now in the world what good cooperation. In science, mainly in pharmacology, everywhere, every people are working together and everyone is thinking about the values of the democracy. Because the privacy nowadays is on the table. So are 2 ways very important to cooperate in the future. And with the experience in the next 2 years, I believe that we'll regain a new globalization with new values, a new market.
Don't be pessimistic is my point. I agree with you fully. Don't be pessimistic only in the sense how long it will take. The direction you are saying, we will get there. It's going to happen naturally because people are going to vote the next rounds for these things. But today you need to understand the problem of your leader. Your leader doesn't have the tools to solve the problem. It's not about weak leadership. He doesn't have the tool, my friend. The US dollar is too strong. It's difficult for people to survive it. And this is why the measures IMF are pushing today, and poor countries even more. We will survive it. Many people will get hurt, but think about the people, the health, the unemployment, this part, and then come the companies. The governments don't have the tools to solve the problem. So again, think that with their limitation, it doesn't get solved by cooperation. It doesn't solve it. You have to cooperate, of course, but they don't have the tool, you see? Then there are risks on decision making. The European Union is not able to make the decisions that it needs in this environment. You now know better. You see, you know what? Why did the British not join the European currency from the beginning? I was a student in the UK, I'll never forget it, studying engineering, and I wasn't studying economics. And I remember they were debating that they should not join the European currency, okay? This is like 40 years ago. And they were debating it, 2 parties, which are opposing, Labour and Conservative, whatever their name was, and but they agreed on one thing. They said, we will not be part of this currency. Why? They said, because we lose a bit on the upside when things are doing well, but when there's a catastrophe, it will all break down, you see? So imagine now I'm thinking, my God, 40 years ago, those people predicted, they made their decision. Now the people that made a different decision have to survive also. You're not, okay, so this is what I'm saying. Don't be so gloomy, take the action for the step. And I fully agree with you. People will cooperate, they have to. They have no choice. But don't be so pessimistic, okay? That's all I'm saying. You know, wake up and let's act for something positive. Don't be pessimistic.
Yes, I hope Ivan Jovatic could get some responses to his answer, isn't it, to his question?
Of course, and I have at least one more for the final panelist, if that is okay, because there is something that I'm also curious about. All the responses are really worth, and thank you to both of you, and even before to Professor Gurib Hakim, because you gave a lot of good insights. This is the time, as we all know, when we are rethinking all models and all things in our life and in our professional life. But because we're running out of the time, I will ask another brief question to Mr. Ferry. Last but not least, as we usually say, what do you think, by your opinion, because we witnessed tremendous technological development in these recent years, then we witnessed then something that belongs to, under the quotes, old world, completely locked down the global world, or globalized world. Can we use that technology? Can we use things like big data, artificial intelligence, and the machine learning, for example, to fight to COVID-19 or any other potential pandemia? We had an example in China, what China did, and how they tried potentially, because we're hearing certain rumors, but irrelevant, how they tried to solve the issue. Is that a good road, or we are entering in the time of so-called surveillance capitalism?
Wow, it's a very difficult question because its technology has always double-edged sword. So definitely, big data. We will not survive. We will not be as efficient. We will not be efficient without using big data and artificial intelligence. That is a fact. And you have examples either in China mainland or Taiwan, China, whatever it is. We seen or South Korea. We seen that how big data can and artificial intelligence can improve things. However, the drawback is that big data and access of technology will definitely give the authorization to government to limit the liberties, etc. Because we are running out of time, I think this is one of the main challenge, and this reminds me the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize was invented by somebody who invented dynamites, and dynamites could be used to cut mountains in order to build, or they can be done to destroy people. So that's the world we live in. And the other thing I wanted to say, this acceleration will be also part of our lives. When this COVID-19 ends, I bet you less than 10 years we'll have another one. And then we need, and I come back to what most of the panelists said, we need to look beyond the hype. We need to build the trust. Build the trust and build the resilience, because this will become the norm that we will have more diseases coming. The acceleration of technology accelerated as well invention, good phenomena, but unfortunately it will accelerate this kind of things. So we need to be ready for it, and we need to go back to our value system. We need to know to the common goods. What do we want to achieve from our lives? and act now. Every one of us now, every single one of us now is part of his state. It may not be part, you may not be part of the government, but you are part of the state. Therefore, you have a role to play, and you need to play that role, as Dr. Paul said. We need to play our roles. We need to make sure that the use of technology will be optimized in the good way, and we need to make sure that we don't drift into total autocracies.
You know, brother, just one quick question, Baybars Bey. A very important closing point on what has been said right now. And Numan Bey has also said it quite clearly. And this is like this. We are talking about data, real data. We are talking about a lot of data. You're talking about, again, artificial intelligence, which are tools that allow you to get a lot of information. This information is done for your own good. Today, Google and Facebook have a lot of information about you, and they're making money from you. Governments are not going to try to make money from you, and they're doing it for your protection. Privacy rules can be managed, okay? It's not a problem. But what is important here for me as a closing statement is this. The worst type of situation to have is gut feel people. When you have, for example, let's say, a decision made on gut feel, just like I was discussing earlier, even investment decisions or government decisions, deciding about all of these things. Since we have the power of computing, collecting the data and managing it, no decisions should be made without a proper, thorough analysis and transparency. Everybody got the information. This is the key part, you see. Then there's no gut feel anymore, okay? You have to show all the data. Of course, there's a range of answers. This is what the key point. When you have, for example, what you hear from the US today is quite shocking. The largest country in the world, most powerful country, and it's being led by gut feel. You see, this is the danger. The same thing, SoftBank. I gave that example, $100 billion. It's not a joke. It's big money, you see. And all of it was done by gut feel, you see, following a star of a company. There are no stars. The future is collaborative, teams working together in entities that they can get a fair reward for their success, because no one can succeed without the other. Is the nature of life, whether you are small companies or larger companies. That's the key point. The price of privacy, I believe, is simply that whether you trust your government to use information against you or not, but at least it's not being used to rip you off and take money from you. You see what I'm saying? So the privacy can be managed by law. It is not a problem. Don't follow the people that say, in my heart, I think this should stay. It doesn't work by gut feel. That's the last message. I think, Brother Baybars Bey, should be our motto. Okay.
Yes, great. Thank you. Yes.
One very small comment. I would like to add to the decision data-driven. I agree with you. Data-driven with a human touch, because let's not forget that it's humanity and our lives which are at stake.
But that is my point. Actually, my point actually is that the human factor should base its consideration on real data. But if you merge the human factor with I'm the strongest, I have a gut feel for this, we shouldn't do this, which is what we are seeing in many large countries, and we know who I'm talking about. That doesn't make sense. So his followers say he's right, the other ones, it's not political, you see, but put the real data, then have a debate and measure it. That is where I believe there'll be a big lesson from this that we have gone through now, and it is survivable, and it will not take as long as people think. That doesn't mean it's the last time it will happen. Of course not. The next big one, by the way, where I fully disagree 100% with Madam President also, is to say all of a sudden now that global warming, I believe, I told Baybars Bey, by the way, that if you think COVID is a problem, wait until you see water levels from global warming. And that is not reversible. COVID is reversible, okay? We suffer a pain, but then water level rises, which also affects her country. This is a key thing. This is another big problem. It will take time, but that is not reversible. But from now, you need to start planning. But you see, countries have limited tools today. Numan Bey, the countries today, just between 3 months, they are worse off and they haven't done anything wrong. You understand? So the decision makers, because of that, we have to be more understanding and make some sacrifice, everybody. You see, it's a joint sacrifice, not joint collaboration. Today, we need a joint sacrifice for maximum survival.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent
Thank you
answers.
very much.
I think that it was kind of a call for more humanism in the future, and more paying attention to several different things, like Dr. Paul said, that there are issues and challenges that cannot be reversed, and we need to pay attention to all of them. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. These are the last minutes of our roundtable, and we have still 110 participants in the room watching us, by the way.
Very good.
I'm thanking so much to dear distinguished speakers, dear Dr. Done, His Excellency Fehri, His Excellency Sandoz, and Madam President has just left, and dear Ivan Jovetic for asking the questions. And this month, we have 4 more webinars, by the way. You will receive the links shortly. The May month dedicated for women entrepreneurship. So Global Women Leaders Committee of the WBAF will run 4 webinars for women leadership and entrepreneurship. And in June, Startup Committee will make 4 startups, for startup webinars. By the way, Startup Committee is now preparing a survey, which we are going to send around 100,000 network members of WBAF around the world, and we will share the survey results shortly. What startups are now suffering from, what are the expectations, if they see the future as positive, negative, whatever. We will see what will be the result of the survey. So I am thanking so much again, and very shortly, in maybe half an hour, you will also receive the link of the full session from YouTube. And in case the participants who joined late can watch the beginning parts too. So I'm saying goodbye to all of you and thanking so much. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.